off it.
No nymph off of a spinner. I never have.
The first namer I ever caught,
Yeah.
I dropped a green weenie off of a spinner. I'll never forget it. And I landed Hog
absurd.
Boy. The original Hog
Get out.
Johnson
Oh, yeah.
was caught on a green weenie. And I was fishing spinners, and I'll never forget it.
You used to hold that up like this. Like Matt's hold was like this. I always liked that. Your head would just be peeking up over.
I was the OG
Your eyes.
with a big chew in.
Yeah. That's right.
This is the Trout Bitten Podcast.
Trout bitten. Trout bitten? Trout bitten.
Trout Bitten.
Trout bitten.
Yeah, Trout Bitten.
Trout bitten.
It's about trout. Wild trout.
This is Trout Bitten. This is the Trout Bitten Podcast, and thanks for tuning in. My name's Dominic. I'm the owner of Trout Bitten and the author of troutbitten.com. All right, my friends, it's season 19. The Trout Bitten crew is here with me, and we're here to get real about dry dropper fishing. One of the things that bothers me the most about fly fishing, let's say the education side, is kind of the oversimplistic approach to the tactic. And sure, we all know you can go out there and fish a couple flies, catch a couple fish, maybe even luck into an amazing day where the trout just have the feed bag on. We love those days, and you probably get a few every season. But more often than not, on our wild trout waters, on pressured streams, on some of our favorite rivers, trout are not pushovers. And what keeps us catching through those times, really through the average times, is the refinement of tactics. It's really about knowing your tools and adjusting to the strengths while trying to minimize weaknesses. Now, none of that is easy. None of it's simple. Like I said, it kind of bugs me to hear anglers repeat the same basic, kind of elementary advice because they heard it from the guy at the fly shop or they read it in a fly fishing 101 article. And here's one of those things. Dry dropper, right? Just put a nymph under the dry fly and get the best of both worlds. Just that easy. Then the trout can eat either fly, right? They can eat your dry if that's what they want, or they can have the nymph. Because we all know 90% of what a trout eats is subsurface, right? That's probably another oversimplification. The idea that you can have your cake and eat it too, that you're going to get great drifts on your dry fly and the nymph, and that you can somehow double your chances by dropping a nymph under the dry is not true. That's my opinion. And it's what we'll call here the big lie of dry dropper fishing. The problem, as I see it, is that in most cases, neither fly ends up with a great drift. Instead, both flies are compromised. The presentation of both flies suffers. The pure, natural dead drift of the dry fly is, well, it's altered. It's not pure anymore. And we could probably say the same thing about the nymph. That dead drift on the nymph is not as pure. I guess that all sounds pretty negative, but I don't want it to be. We can have great drifts with a dry dropper rig. Obviously, it's a go-to choice for a bunch of fishermen, and it's honestly one of my favorite ways to fish a river. But I think the point here, and in this discussion we want to have tonight, is to acknowledge the problems with a dry dropper system, like the inherent drawbacks, so we can then specifically deal with them or even get rid of those drawbacks altogether. You want to know the problem and try to solve it. All right, that's what we're going to do here in a moment. But first, let me introduce the Trout Bitten guys with a question for each of you that came in from a loyal listener, really a longtime follower or supporter of Trout Bitten from way back when it was just a fishing blog, all those years ago. So Mark Harmon emailed me and said, Dom, here's a quick question for the whole Trout Bitten crew. Mono or fluoro? What's your go-to Tippet brand? And do you think there's much difference between brands? All right, now real quick, I'm going to give you my standard public service announcement and mention that it's all monofilament. And the distinction is really nylon and fluoro. We've been through that before. It's a pet peeve. It's all mono. Anyway, Matt Grobe, you okay after the big loss?
I took a hit. My
I took
pride.
a hit.
But, congratulations to the Flyers.
Yeah.
Right?
Kinda.
Well-earned victory. I mean, they beat us, but your franchise is still irrelevant. They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1975.
I thought you'd bring that up.
Wow.
I just want all the listeners to know that. So all the Philly faithful, You guys are still a bunch of losers.
That's how you make friends.
There
Sorry.
you go.
Sorry.
What about
Flyers
you-
suck.
What about your Tippet? What about your There's a guy on the Flyers named Tippet. We kept calling him 8X Tippet.
8X Tippet.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a pain in our ass, wasn't he?
Yes.
Um.
Reminds me of Scotty Hart now. Remember him?
Oh gosh.
Big,
Yeah.
tall
They
guy
got-
with red hair.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Looks like
Yeah,
their
it's funny.
mascot.
What's his name? Grudy
Yeah.
or Gritty?
Yeah, something.
Austin, don't you have anything to say?
I don't watch the NHL.
All right, good.
Mm-mm.
It's better that way.
Tell us about
Anyway,
your Tippet.
Tippet.
Yep.
Yeah, I.
Real quick, your brand,
I'm a
your preference.
yeah. I'm a Rio Floraflex guy.
Monofluoro. Oh, did I say that? Nylon or fluoro? Just asking
Yeah,
a
fluoro.
question. All the time?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
For dries?
Yeah. I
All
don't.
right. That's Matt's answer. What about the smartest guy in the room, Dr. Trevor Smith?
I'm a Cortland guy. I like the Floraflex too, but I've run with Cortland fluorocarbon for years and just keep buying the same thing.
All fluoro.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah,
dries.
well, no. I mean, for dries,
Yeah.
so I have played around with fluorocarbon as my like terminal tippet for dries.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I use nylon.
Josh Darling, what about you, bud?
Yeah, fluoro for nymphing and nylon for dries, and I use pretty much all Orvis stuff right now.
That's his answer. Mark, there you go. Deli, you change, I bet.
No, I'm pretty consistent. I use fluoro all the time.
Mhm.
I don't care. It saves me from carrying two spools. If I was in a boat all the time, I'd probably carry both nylon and fluoro. Obviously the nylon for dries, but for the most part, I use fluoro. I like the Orvis stuff. I'm slowly switching over to just use Seagar, like 4 pound and 6 pound and 8 pound.
Yeah.
I think after my Tippet like finishes out of what I have, I'm just going to respool them with Seagar. The yellow label stuff.
Invisex. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you said was like having to deal with two spools. I mean, I only keep one spool at any time. Like I don't have two like groups of Tippet spools, you know, like my nylon and my fluoro. I have only 5X. That's all I carry for nylon. And if I can't make that work for dries, then I go fluoro.
I like that. So why are we all talking at least about using nylon for dries?
I mean, the floatability.
Fair. For me, it's about the softness, or let's say the flexibility. It's hard to find in the fluoro, but boy, there's a lot of fluoros now that are getting much softer.
Pretty soft.
Like Orvis
Mhm.
Mirage is really soft
Mhm.
for a fluoro.
I think the Floraflex is pretty soft too.
I haven't used that for a long time.
Oh, Flexi.
Old Flexi, what about you, young love? What are you on these days?
For nymph, and I'm on the Invisex for 4 and 5X.
Yeah.
For dries, I've been fishing nylon Scientific Angler, I think the last 2 seasons. And like Josh, I only carry 4 and 5X of that because I'm not going to be rebuilding down to 3X past usually if I'm on my Harvey. I'm probably not going to have to do that. So
What
I
about
carry
when
the
you
least
do?
amount as possible.
Like that's my thing. I have 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X, and 6X of
Yeah.
nylon.
I just carry an extra leader. If I'm rebuilding from like 2X up, then I'll probably switch my leader out.
Tom brings a caddy. He's got an extra guy waiting around with him with his
But I
extra.
want to do dry dropper for a long time, honestly, on that Harvey. I'm going to make the 2X and the 3X sections a little longer. Stout. I'm going to basically beef up the leader. Not always, but I'm sure we'll talk about it. I don't know. I like my leader building.
When did you guys start using nylon?
Back in the 90s, I mean, when I started, that's when I was, using nylon. And then I started using fluoro, though. Well, early 2000s, or probably 2008, I mean.
Did you go back and forth then, or did you just learn that you didn't like the fluoro?
You know, it was Steve Sawyer, our buddy, Gearman Steve. I was out on a trip with him, and I was real resistant to fluoro because I was like, I don't need this. I'm catching fish. This is abrasion enough.
Yeah.
Abrasion resistant enough. I was like, I don't need it. And I lost my whole Tippet, stack somewhere. And Steve helped me out. And he had like an extra spool of 4X or something, fluoro. I wouldn't know what brand by now. And he gave it to me. And I used it. I mean, it took like a half hour using it. And I went, oh, that's kind of different. Because I was whatever nylon I was using back then, it was like Cortland nylon. It was not very abrasion resistant. And, you get knots and things like that in the leader, and they would break much easier, I felt. And, you're hooking tree limbs and stuff, and you can get the snag out, but a lot of times the nylon was damaged. And I was doing all the same stuff, hard on the tippet kind of stuff as I always had been with the nylon, and that fluoro was holding up. And so I'm serious. From that day forward, I was like, okay, I'll buy fluoro. And then because it lasted longer, I felt like it was cost effective because I wasn't going through as much. So for me, it's been underneath ever since then. If I'm underneath, I'm using fluoro, but I have stayed with the nylon on top. And yet there have been plenty of times now where I'm using fluoro on top.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you see a difference in like the, like a specific X tippet, like 5X, if you had 5X nylon versus 5X fluoro, and you went back, like, would you think 3X fluoro and versus 3X nylon, there's any difference there from a performance standpoint? I guess what I'm getting at is like the thicker diameter stuff. Do you see that like as a big difference, or do you ever A/B test that stuff?
No, I haven't for a while. What about you guys?
I notice when I'm tying knots, I feel like when you tie that knot, like when you're cinching it down, you've got to be a little bit more gentle with the nylon.
Yeah, it'll burn easier.
Yeah.
Well, you untie yours too, Deli.
That is odd. What knot is that you back off?
Just a clinch knot.
Backs off his clinch knot. Because that saves time.
It does. I don't have to retie a hole.
Saves material.
It might.
Yeah. It's cost effective. I'm saving the world.
Yeah.
2 inches of tippet at a time.
We appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you, Deli.
I'd be curious to see what back to the performance piece, like if you performed, went head to head nylon versus carbon on a riffly stretch of water and then like in a glassy stretch of water, how much floatability, like if you had two anglers casting, you know what I mean? And you watched it in real time, what that performance difference would look like on the water.
So now you're talking about flotation. And Trevor, you brought that up.
Just like the flotation, the stretch, like, fish pickiness, right? Or fish eating dry flies because of the nylon over fluoro.
No, I don't think.
I'd
say it that way,
but I do. Yeah.
Please.
I just don't like. I've noticed a difference in performance when I'm fishing dry flies if I have more than my terminal tippet be fluorocarbon. Like terminal tippet doesn't seem to make a difference in terms of my drift for the most part. Depends on my cast, but I definitely will notice a belly if I have like say I tie 5 to 3 to 2 all in fluorocarbon at the end of my leader. I will notice that belly out, and then it's just like it's a liability, I guess, on the water because it's not floating. Now I can grease it up. Like I can definitely, I can paste it. And I've done that before and that's not a problem. But when I'm building my dry fly leaders, I just always go with nylon. And honestly, my nighttime fishing is always nylon as well. And I don't know, like you guys probably know, and I feel like I should know, but like as far as memory goes, like when I straighten out my leaders, like I'm always straightening out nylon, but I haven't played around with I haven't played around with thick enough fluorocarbon to even know if you could straighten it out like that.
I do that in saltwater. I'm using like 15 and 20 pound, fluoro sometimes. It holds a coil.
And will it hold it?
It holds it, but it stretches out. Well, the brands that I use, right?
Yeah.
It's Seagar or something. It's like the blue label Seagar that I'll use. And I don't think I really need to use it, but I'm not going through much either.
Do you think the weight of a dry fly impacts things?
How's that? That's cool.
I fish a lot of heavy dry flies, right? And I just don't see the performance impacts as much when I'm fishing a size 4 salmon fly or a grasshopper, or like if you guys threw that on the cicada, like I'm wondering if you fish that cicada on fluoro, like that thing floats all day.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
so you're talking about the flotation again, like that matters to you.
Well,
I never really think about the flotation of.
Okay.
When you said that, I was thinking about turnover. Like if there's a turnover difference between the two.
That's the softness, right?
Right.
The flexibility.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just don't notice like much performance difference with big foam flies. I almost like the fluoro better from a casting standpoint. But if I'm fishing delicate sulfurs, size 16s, tricos, I get that piece of it.
Right. That's why I want the most flexible.
Delicate 16.
Yep.
So it's like,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like we don't have a lot of bigger dry flies we're fishing. I mean, there are times, right? But in general, our hatches are smaller flies.
I was saying the other day, because we got the big size 14 sulfur right now, and I was like, that's the big one.
Isn't that
It's not that
the
big.
what is that?
No.
What do they call that? Ephemerilla rotunda.
Hey, this guy,
Is that it?
right?
Wow.
You know,
Ephemerilla rotunda.
Used in Latin. All right, you get out of here.
You get out of here.
That's right. All right, so that's the answer for Mark. Little, grab bag of everything. One more question. Somebody want to read this one? Got something from Raymond.
I always like reading things.
I know you do. So I've been wearing Tajima polarized lenses for over a year now, and I can tell you they've changed my vision and my comfort level on the water. First, I chose a progressive prescription, and I haven't looked back. Previously, I was carrying readers on the stream, but by putting my prescription in the glasses, I put my Tajima lenses on at the beginning of the day, and I never take them off. Second, my go-to lens choice is Tajima's Yellow-Green 40 Silver Mirror, because with their high light transmission, they're perfect for the cloudy low-light days that we all love so much. On brighter days, I choose Tajima's Brown 15 Green Mirror because they block more light and eliminate eye strain when the sun is strong. Prescription or not, Tajima takes any of your existing frames and puts the finest polarized lens technology into them for a fraction of the cost of a new pair, with purpose-built lens tints and colors designed for fly fishing and matched for your conditions. Tajima's service is also second to none. My Tajima lenses aren't an accessory. They're a key piece of daily gear. Send in your own frames today. Visit tajima-direct.com. That's TAJIMA-direct.com. Upgrade your lenses and see what you've been missing. Good anglers know that a reliable fly line can mean everything, but replacing fly lines every season, that adds up. It's costly, it's wasteful, and now it's unnecessary because Restore Line has created the ultimate repair solutions. Restore Line offers products to repair damaged fly lines, to splice fully broken fly lines, and to add a new loop to the end of any fly line. Restore Line's easy-to-use products extend your fly line's life without compromising performance, while also cutting down your environmental impact. So don't toss out your fly line just because it's worn. Restore it, renew it, and keep fishing with confidence. Restore Line, innovation for anglers who care. Learn all about it at restoreline.com.
Anyway, Raymond Stroud, he was at our New Trail Live podcast that was about the harms of stocking over wild trout. And he sent over a question. Dominic, thanks to Trout Bitten for having the hard talk about what stock trout do to a wild fishery. That was a fun night too. I forget who, but somebody asked how you decide what rivers should be stocked. And I know you said you are a hard liner about it, and nothing that holds wild trout should be stocked. But I'm curious what the rest of the guys think. Thanks for putting it together. Hope the push continues.
That's like you said. I already said I'm kind of a hard liner about it. That's not really a fair position to take. I mean, what if there's two wild trout per mile? Should are we going to try to save that and not stock it? That's a bit of an extreme
I think it's hard
approach.
though, because I mean, that's what's hard. Like as soon as you're not a hard liner, it's really hard to justify where you're going to take that stand. So I do think I think if you have to side on anything, being a hard liner makes sense because that's one fixed rule. And even if you're a hard liner, you're still including such a small proportion of waterways that it doesn't seem like you're sacrificing a whole lot to just keep it at that, right? So I don't think that we're in danger of losing our stock trout opportunities in general. Maybe people have to drive a few more minutes,
Yeah, I'd agree
to
with
get
that.
to that stocked waterway.
Here's a good question for you guys. In your situation, you got some waters that definitely have thermal issues in places that cause there to be zero wild trout, right? Is that accurate to say?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of places
So in
I grew
that
up,
case-
Western PA. Yeah.
Yeah, but even in central Pennsylvania,
yeah, sure. Here too.
I'm talking whatever. I'll leave the name out of it, but there's certain sections that are void of the wild trout because they get too hot, right? So in that scenario, it's tricky, right? I think that could be somewhat tricky. To me, the rule should be, there's almost got to be, and I'm not saying class A, but
Right.
there's got to be some wild trout from top to bottom, and that river should absolutely be off limits, right? But if you have a 40-mile long river or a 30-mile long river and only 10 miles of it yields wild trout, then it's like, all right, well, then are you going to, punish the other 20 miles of river for not being able to have fish in it? That gets complicated.
It does get complicated, but it's hard because you're stocking in March and April when it's all cold, and so if you are stocking one of those marginal waters, you're still stocking over the wild trout in those marginal sections. So like from an economic impact or like biological impact, I feel like you're having the ill effect that you're worried about,
They need to do a test study on, like, there's a couple streams in central PA they could easily do this to and monitor, right?
For sure.
The only way you're going to have it done is if you have the data to support it, because you could find out the opposite. You could find out you stop stocking those sections and, there's like still not many wild trout, right? That ever come into those because of the thermal issues.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
That's where I'm at too, Grobeck. I try to research the amount of stream studies or surveys that have been done on my local waters and all of our local waters. And there's major gaps in time when those surveys get taken or get done, like sometimes 20 years. And, I'm interested in a certain section. There's no data on it. And then we make decisions based on maybe one test out of a 20-year span. And I was down low on a piece of water 2 weeks ago, and I ran into a guy fishing, and we were just talking about the quality of trout that are down there. And I said, I don't know if the state doesn't know or if they just don't care, but they stock thousands of rainbows over these browns. He goes, oh no, they're well aware. They just don't care.
Right.
But there's no data for me to go look and say, oh yeah, state's aware. They surveyed this last year. And I don't expect it to happen that often, but 20 years between surveys in places that,
especially a stream incredible, like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The amount of people who travel to fish here, the amount of time and resources and businesses built on those fisheries successes, and we don't have it available. That baffles me a bit.
Well, they don't want the data because they don't want to have to own up to it.
I think what's going on is there's all this paralysis through analysis right now, right? You've got the native fish, you've got the wild fish, and everyone wants to argue their point. Like, to me, I think it's like a baby step thing where you say, okay, let's pick out the class A streams, maybe the class B streams. Let's at least make progress. Like, instead of trying to talk about this or do that, I feel like at least get momentum and work on, take a baby step and say, okay, class A, we're not going to stock over class A.
Right.
And then
no matter what.
Let's evaluate what happens to those streams. And then, okay, ideally it'd be the next year. Okay, now let's look at class Bs. The problem is there's not a whole lot of data for all of these streams because some of them are surveyed 10 or 15 years apart. Depends on when the survey is done, how many fish are in there, whether they're migrated. But like, I think we know what, like, the class A streams are publicly listed. Get some momentum in trying to make some progress to resolve some of the issues.
And the resource stuff's BS, right? Because we had an issue out here with brown trout, numbers going down. And it's pretty, the agency partnered with local universities, and got students within the biology class, whatever, right? And they assembled a team that monitors this stuff, right? And it's like, you can't tell me that, the amount of universities in Pennsylvania in that area, there can't be resources used to monitor this stuff. And I bet if they asked for volunteers, there'd be plenty of people that would be willing to help sample, a 3-mile stretch of river for 4 years in a row and see what happens. It's not, it's not hard, right? It's just the willingness of that particular commission to do it. It's like a bold move, right? And somebody just needs to get bold and do it. It's interesting to see the different states, right? Because you see states that embody it and have data every year. So there's no excuse for other states to fall by the wayside and not do anything.
It'd be cool if the leadership in our state did seize the opportunity to mobilize the people that are concerned about this, right? And that, I mean, I would 100% volunteer to be out there. If it made a difference in terms of us, what streams we were stocking, I think all of us would be out on the water helping gather some of the data that would help drive that. And it'd be cool to be included in that group of people that are worried and concerned and want the right thing, for our conservation.
I guess to wrap that up, to Raymond's point, or to Raymond's question, it's like no matter where you draw the line, like I said, I draw that hard line. It's going to be a tough one. It's a tough question. There is no, this makes all the sense kind of answer. That's the way it is.
And I think Bill's point might be the most practical.
I know. I like that.
You start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. With Class A. But draw that hard line on Class A.
That's right.
That makes a statement too, like a principled statement, ethical statement. Like, this is what we're doing. We're taking care of those Class A streams.
Right.
Don't we say that's illegal too by our own state law?
Yes. Yeah.
Except we have an exemption policy that's also in place. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. We could go down that road again, but we kind of have a couple times, and I'm sure we will again. Let's get to it here, though, guys. The big lie of dry dropper. That's our topic. In August 2022, about 4 years ago, Austin and I did a 5-part skills series on 3 styles of dry dropper. And we got made fun of because we had 3 styles of dry dropper in a 5-part series, and people are like, you just fish dry dropper.
Huge fly fisherman made fun of us.
Yes, huge fly fisherman, which I like him.
It was good.
No, it's fair criticism.
Absolutely.
It is. But those podcast episodes are very much like based on the article series that came before it. That was in 2019 of the same title. And I guess this concept that there's not just one way to fish dry dropper, but really 3 styles has been part of the way I approach things for a long time. And those 3 styles for me are standard dry dropper, or I often call it bobber dry dropper, because that's the concept. And then light dry dropper, and then tight line dry dropper. And you can, and maybe you should go back and check out those resources because they're there for you. And a lot of what we'll talk about, or at least some of, I think, what we'll talk about tonight is detailed over there and broken down in that series of articles and podcasts. But let's start with this, guys. You heard what I said in the intro. There's some big problems with dry dropper style. Do you agree with that? Disagree with it? What are those problems? And for your fishing, basically, is it a big deal?
Oh man, we're gonna agree on this one.
Oh yeah. In our text today, I thought you were gonna come and be disagreeable.
I know. You said bring the disagreement, but
disagreeable deli.
I feel like dry dropper is almost the worst of everything.
Huh.
Like I love to fish it.
Yeah.
I agree with you that I love to fish it, but technically you're half-assing 2 techniques, nymphing and fishing in a dry.
Nice.
And you're throwing it in the middle, and you're not getting an efficient drift on either fly most times. I think it depends on water type too. Like, I guess I'll say like dry dropper, if you've got pea gravel and you've got consistent currents with no breaks in it, like Gravy Boat Grove out there in Montana with all those nice, easy, slow rivers. And dumb rainbows.
Shots fired.
Yeah.
And so, where like if you've got a river that's got a bunch of boulders and complex currents, then I feel like dry dropper you're doing the worst of both at that point.
Yeah. Even with a lot of depth fluctuation, I think it gets pretty tricky, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's 2 main reasons that I'll like concede to using dry dropper, and one would be when the fish are so active in a hatch type scenario, or like during pre-hatch, where it may not matter if the drift is at the right level. They might be following bugs to the surface, and so fishing that middle zone might be really effective. And then I'm also trying to get an idea of when they may start keying in on the surface flies, but even in that scenario, the dry dropper for me would be like a transitional technique, I think, and I would eventually commit to one or the other based on where I'm seeing the fish respond. But the other situation would just be from a searching standpoint. Like, you can't it's hard to beat your ability to reach out pretty far and wide with that technique and do a lot of prospecting. And you really, I mean, you're limited obviously if you're going to try to do that with a tight line to a nymph only technique. Now, if you're just going to use a dry fly, that's one thing. You could certainly prospect with a dry fly, but obviously, I don't know. I would be curious to know from you guys if you think prospecting with a dry fly alone versus a dry dropper has any particular, like, is it obvious which one is better?
That's interesting. Prospecting, meaning that you're going to be casting in multiple currents, multiple water types, far bank, close to you, maybe unpredictable, unpredictable fishing situations over and over again. I don't like to have something else attached to my dry fly when I'm fishing that way. If I'm going to be prospecting with dries, like that's the only thing I'm going to be doing. If I'm going to be fishing dry dropper, it's going to be really intentional as to why I'm making that decision. And I think to Deli's point, and maybe somewhere in between what we're saying, a dry dropper can maybe be at its best at both extremes of the spectrum. And when you go somewhere in the middle, then it gets wishy-washy and maybe not good at anything, or maybe not the best at anything. But maybe in its best form that either one of the two is along for the ride and not both, meaning one of those two flies is the one that you're fishing and the other one is guiding or assisting the other. So in a bobber rig, like you're saying, Dom, you're fishing something like a foam fly or something super buoyant, and you're holding a fly at a certain depth that's weighted, because you're going to really be looking for good dead drifts on the nymph. You're not looking for a pretty dead drift on your dry fly, because you're not going to get it. It's going to be anchored up there doing funny stuff, moving at odd paces. Other way around, if you're looking to fish a dry fly really well and you're just going to drop a unweighted, really small nymph off the back and hope maybe you're going to get an eat on the emerger, that's good. But you're really looking for a good drag feed drift on your dry fly at that point. Maybe there's some weight built into the fly that if you're fishing all mono system helps deliver the presentation. But when you get in between, that's when I usually start not doing as well.
That's a good way to put it. What's the difference between a good day on the water and one you'll be talking about for years? It's the gear and the tactics. Tactical Fly Fisher was founded in 2015 by Fly Fishing Team USA angler Devin Olson. Tactical Fly Fisher brings knowledge and gear from the World Fly Fishing Championships to your own fishing trips. Whether you're an expert on the river or you're wading into new territory, Tactical Fly Fisher sells cutting-edge fly tying and fly fishing gear, and they provide the education to help you master using it. So elevate your game at tacticalflyfisher.com and use the code TB15 for 15% off your first order. That code does not apply to rods, reels, vices, waders, and boots. When nymphing with an indicator, there is nothing more sensitive to strikes, more responsive on the water, and more natural to cast than yarn. And the New Zealand strike indicator system is absolutely one of the best options out there. Ultimate adjustability. That's the key to any suspension system, because intentional modifications to meet the moment catch trout. The New Zealand system attaches to the leader in just seconds. The yarn mounts to the thinnest tippets, it slides when you want it to, and stays put when you don't. No knots, no line kinks, and no fuss. With the addition of a new hydrophobic synthetic yarn to the lineup, this is very much a complete system. So Trout Bitten listeners know that I've advocated for yarn as my first choice for over a decade, and the longer I guide, the more I choose the New Zealand Strike Indicator system, because anglers simply connect with it. Visit strikeindicator.com to learn more, because using yarn will change the way you fish.
I think all that's valid, right? But I think one thing that limits you guys on dry dropper stuff is you mentioned it before, right? You're fishing small flies and you're limited to that depth, that weight, the amount of weight you can suspend off that dry fly, because you're going to sink your dry fly.
Point.
We're out here, I can really effectively drop heavier nymphs to get into that feed zone on some of those trout, and it doesn't sink my fly, right? So if I'm approaching, fish out here with a big buoyant piece of foam that's imitating a stonefly, I can also drop a really heavy, soft hackle off it or rubber leg off it, right? You guys aren't dropping a rubber leg off any of your dry flies.
Well,
there,
and
right?
they might still eat your dry fly that you're talking about. That's the
a lot
thing.
of the time
Like,
they do.
You're saying here they
Yeah.
won't, and we agree.
Well, you just don't get that opportunity,
No.
right? So it's just a different. So I think you have to take into, like, if you're lucky enough to be in a spot that you can throw, big foam or whatnot. There's definitely some differences there when we're talking about. I think it's important for us to highlight that. I think we all agree it's not fun throwing delicate mayflies and some caddis flies with the dropper all the time, right? Like, for what you guys just nailed, right? All those reasons. But there are some differences when you get into that bigger dry fly pattern. You guys had cicadas last year, things like that. You can get away with a more, I don't know, you can add more weight to those nymphs to get down deeper, and change things up a little bit.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. It's a relative scale.
I was curious if you guys, I'm assuming the answer is no, but did any of you spend any time using cicadas to suspend
No.
bigger nymphs?
I
I figured the answer was no. I was curious.
I was going pure dry.
Missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
I played with it some.
Did you?
I played with it a little bit and caught a couple fish, but it was like it quickly lost its luster. Where I was like, I'd rather just throw that big thing around. Screw the nymph.
I know it was too special of an
I can do that in a
opportunity
year.
for me to do that, Josh. Matt, you're talking about how you can suspend more, and so let's say you got 40 centigrams, like a size 10 stonefly, 4mm bead under. I don't know, what are you going to put it under? Size 6 hopper or something like that.
Chubby.
Okay, exactly. There you go. So that's our setup. Now, when that stonefly kind of gets in, maybe you can get it down in some bottom currents and it slows down. Or for whatever reason, it's just in a different current that's moving a little different than the top water. And then you agree it starts to alter the drift of that dry. But I guess my question is, do you think then that it doesn't matter that much, or it doesn't matter as much because you have a big fly that can kind of move around a little bit? The natural that it's imitating.
Bingo, right? So a stonefly is going to react different on that water surface than a mayfly drift.
More forgiving.
Right? When you have mayflies, they're sailboats. They're floating freely. Where stoneflies are creating commotion. They're slowing down. They have wings that can literally, go across currents. So they're not necessarily drifting dead drift all the time, right? So those altercations in those flies, whether that be the chubby Chernobyl imitating a golden stone, a salmon fly, or a hopper, all three of those insects react different to surface water, and I think you can get away with some less of that just dead drift, right? Sometimes those fish love that action,
Yeah,
that twitch, stop, that go,
twitch it,
just be
Austin.
Yeah, the twitch.
Austin's
real.
Sorry,
and so
Joe.
yeah, so that instance is different than trying to, create a, when those fish get in feeding lanes for spinner falls or mayfly hatches, they're tuned up different, right? They're reacting different because they get into a lane. Stoneflies don't come down a lane, right? They are all over the water at random places because of wind and their mating habits and all that stuff. So I just think you can get away with some of that. I guess the dry dropper's it's just different out here, right? You can get away with some stuff. There's definitely detriments to it, but that's not one of them.
To take it to the extreme, you just brought up a spinner. Has anybody ever dropped anything off a spinner? Because that's like the most delicate, pure dead drift we're trying to get is like on a mayfly spinner, right? That it's dead, it's not moving.
Yeah.
No, I've tried to tie two
anything
together.
Never.
I've tried to tie like two spinners together, but not like drop a nymph off it.
No nymph off of a spinner. I never have.
The first namer I ever caught, I dropped a green weenie off of a spinner. I'll never forget it. And I landed Hog Boy, the original Hog Johnson. Was caught on a green weenie, and I was fishing spinners, and I'll never forget it.
You used to hold that up like this, like Matt's hold was like this. I always liked that. Your head would just be peeking up.
I was the OG
Your eyes.
with a big chew in.
Yeah, that's right. I missed that. Did you say it ate the green weenie?
It ate the green weenie,
dude.
dude. I have no
That's a
idea
strong
why
floating
I dropped
spinner.
the green weenie off.
I heard that's a good emerger pattern during a sulfur hatch.
Yeah,
It's,
spinner fall.
That's luck. We talked about luck.
Yeah.
That's luck.
Oh, what the hell were you thinking, though?
I
You
don't,
weren't
you know,
thinking back
that
then.
fly to
Tried
me
to-
is a big fish fly, right?
Green weenie.
Yeah. And I was just like, you know what? I got all these fish rising.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep a green weenie on.
Well,
And it was an unweighted weenie. So it was a little bit easier to suspend off that rusty spinner.
Technical.
yeah, there's something to that.
We didn't know you're better than us.
Basically, the more weight you put down there, I think the more it's going to affect the dry fly. Do we agree with that?
Yeah, more weight will affect the dry fly more, but less weight on the nymph is also going to mean the nymph it's subject to the movement of the surface. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, you're in situations where the current's fast enough. If you try to drop a light nymph off it, it's going to ride very close to the surface. If you want
Yeah.
to do that, that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also depends a little bit on the depth or like how much tippet you're going to tie off the
Yeah.
end, which I think is another part of the whole problem with the system is that it's annoying to change your depth, right? And I think
Sure.
just because it's annoying, there's a lot of times where I don't do it when I should, right? Or I pick the wrong depth or, like, are you going to really alter it back and forth? My strategy is I tend to err on the long side to start with, and then I can just cut little bits off because that's way less annoying than than retying the whole thing.
Am I the only one who uses a slidable dry dropper? You guys know how I do that, right? Does anybody else do that?
No.
You don't bother with it. Huh?
No.
Too much.
It is some setup, yeah. If I know I'm
Yeah.
going to do that all day, then I'll whatever. I spend the 3 or 4 minutes to set it up.
I've been doing it since we filmed that.
You have?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's cool. Like at least
Yeah.
one person was affected, right?
Yeah, I learned something.
One person
I learned
bought
something
into
that day.
When Josh and I
Yeah.
film, I'm always like, Josh, you're so lucky. You're going to learn so much today.
You learned something.
Hey, I have one more thought for the team with this
Team.
this
Team
dry
Trumpet.
dropper. You're a trout bitten team.
Drop it in
But
team.
Team drop it.
When you think about why you're doing dry
TT.
dropper, right? You think you're trying to imitate, the emergence of a particular insect,
Okay.
and you're trying to imitate what's happening underneath the surface too, right?
Yeah.
So how many times are you like nailing that during the day when that is like when there's surface activity and there's mayflies on top, but there's the quality underneath activity happening where it's really makes sense to be tossing both of those flies. I say this because I'm going to go back to the salmon fly stonefly hatch. That hatch can happen at any time during the day because they're not they get out of their nymph exoskeleton and they're out there. They're not like emerging in the riffles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what is emerging in the riffles is caddisflies and mayflies.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm fishing, I'm fishing these, you want to get these giant eats on big foam. I'm also targeting all these other things that are happening in the water system at that time of day, right? And so like to you guys, do you ever think like, okay, I'm approaching the water and this is, I have a March brown on,
Yeah.
and I know sulfurs are happening or whatever that insect is, and you might say, well, I wonder why my effectiveness during the March brown with dry dropper is really good. Well, but sulfurs, for instance, maybe that's the only thing happening, right? Like you got sulfurs, they're emerging, and then they're adults, and does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
The one hatch that I think that I found is the most successful to fish a dry dropper is a slate drake, because they're kind of like you're talking about on the stoneflies, Matt. In that river, everything's not in like a certain zone throughout the day. Like slate drakes will trickle off. So like throughout the day, let's say you got like a 5-hour window of them like hatching throughout the day. Those fish get used to seeing those bugs in different zones, like in a whole day. And so if you have, you got your dry fly and then you have your dropper, and the other thing, those nymphs are swimmers. They're going to cross current seams and do different things than something that is just like a clinger that's just going to basically drift in the current and would need like a natural drift. And so that's one hatch that I think you do have an advantage to fishing a dry dropper, because they're, at 11 a.m. they're in both of those zones.
I like that.
I like
Yeah.
that too.
I mean, if you break it down, right, it's like what some of these hatches may be better dry dropper hatches than others, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Is what
I
we're
like
saying
that.
though that those bugs are less forgiving? Those are nymphs then that have more movement to them. Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Could it be done? Could you
probably.
fish the slate drake better if you were just pure nymphing in some way?
Probably, but it wouldn't be as fun.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
I also think like along those lines,
Mhm.
like the most common time that I'm using a dry dropper, I think is like summertime terrestrial fishing. And
Really?
I think some of that, yeah. And I think some of that is because for me, I'm sinking an ant off the back of a dry, or I'm sinking like a green weenie, or I'm doing some form that like that green weenie or that ant. If I'm thinking of something that fell into the water off the riverbank or off of some brush, like it belongs just below the surface, or it belongs kind of sinking from the top down rather than something coming from the bottom up. And so even from a depth standpoint, I find it like I don't need to hit the strike zone. I don't need to be on the bottom in order for the fish that are targeting that type of water to be active again, or, towards what I'm throwing. So if I'm fishing a dry dropper terrestrial in the summertime, fishing the banks or fishing under brush or fishing under overhanging foliage, I think I am getting a good, not a best of both worlds, but it's a better, I feel like it's a bit of an advantage to have something just under the water and then something that is actually making a bit of a splat on top.
I'd say in general, like the better I do often in dry dropper, meaning I'm getting eats below and on top. The closer those flies are together, sometimes the better I do.
Yeah.
And I think it's because maybe because the insects themselves are in closer zones. But I come back to also the idea of compromise, where if I'm going to be trying to fish, let's say that March brown or a sulfur, and I'm actually going to try to get eats on the dry fly, and I think, well, they could be eating emergers or nymphs coming off the bottom. I'm also trying to be on the bottom. Which one am I going to try to do well?
Right.
And I ultimately will end up having to compromise one of the two, and I'll get most of my eats on whichever one is preferred. But like if I'm fishing a light dry dropper where the insects are almost to the surface emerging, and that fly is just right under the surface in the film or whatever it may be, then it seems to be much more effective for myself.
When they're closer together, they get to kind of do the same thing or very similar things. They can be in a similar current, if not the same current.
Mm-hmm.
I can be more accurate when they're closer together. Like you were saying, Doc, you like in the summertime with the terrestrials, the dry dropper. I hardly ever do that. I've done it, but especially when the sun's up and the water's low and I'm fishing terrestrials, for me, it's always an ant. And I'm trying to get really, really tight to the banks. Like my accuracy suffers because now I have, even 12 inches back, I got a nymph that can stick there. But I want to be like inches away from the log. And now I'm trying to control that.
Sure.
That's tough. Austin, when you say close, how close will you ride things?
Like if I'm trying to ride close?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a foot or less.
Yeah. I hardly ever go less than 12 inches. I guess why not? So Trout Pitten listeners already know the crew's favorite beer is Broken Heel's Hazy IPA from New Trail Brewing Company. But our friends at New Trail are hard at work developing our next favorites. Each one is like a different fly pattern because some fit your current situation better than others. Like this one they call 24/7 because it's the beer we could drink 365, crafted to go anywhere, anytime. 24/7's light body and low alcohol make it a must-have when you've got day-long plans but still want full IPA flavor. Then there's Trail Marker West Coast IPA, inspired by classic pine and orange flavor. Trail Marker is brilliantly clear, nicely bitter, and available in two varieties, West Coast IPA and Imperial IPA. You can bet the Trout Pitten crew will mix these styles into the cooler with Broken Heels. So check out newtrailbrewingcompany.com to find retailers near you or on the way to the river. To tie a great fly, you need a great hook. So you search for the perfect shank length, a gape that's just the right size, a needle-sharp point, perhaps a downturned eye. Of course, too, a finish that complements the color of your bug. But what's the piece that holds it all together? Thread. Without it, all the great flies we dream up would be a pile of dubbing, fur, and feathers. Thread is, in no uncertain terms, essential to the tying we all do. That's why the next major addition to the fly tying collection at Fooling Mill is a comprehensive range of fly tying thread. Fulling Mill has flat, twisted, and floss threads, a wide range of deniers, and dozens of colors with both tried and tested staples as well as new colors to give your fly that next creative spark. So be sure to ask for Fulling Mill at your local dealer.
You know what comes to my mind when you're talking about what Doc and Dom, you guys are talking about. Dom, I come in your set where I'm like, man, I hate not being able to get the fly close to the bank when I'm fishing a terrestrial, because I feel like that's where the fish are. And then if I have tippet on the back end of it, and if I'm like, this is the right way to fish, like I'll go fish on one bank directly upstream, so I can still kind of land that dry fly close to the rocks. Yeah. And also you get that nymph to drop where it's kind of in line.
Yeah.
Right. But
That's
it kind of
exactly
alters what you're going to do. Right. I mean, for the day, you kind of got to make that plan.
Yeah. And it has to be water that you can wade in that way. But that's one of my favorite ways to do it.
That's the accuracy issue. And so it's not even accuracy for me, like up against structure, but I'm always thinking about, I'm kind of obsessive about trying to get the nymph to go in first and then the dry to land in the same lane. There are different rigs that allow you to do that the best. The tight line dry dropper is the easiest to make that happen. It matters a lot to me.
When that dropper's under the water, you can't necessarily see what the impact of it being in a different seam. But if you put two dry flies on that are very visible, and you put, like, let's say 3 feet of tippet between the two of them, and you cast out, watch what those two flies do to each other on the surface, and then underneath it's doing the same thing,
constant,
if not worse.
Push and pull.
And so I think that's a good visual to help people understand, like, okay, here's the detriment of fishing this style.
Yeah.
If you're not in the same scene.
And the two dries is kind of worst case scenario. I think, in fairness, right? Like, if once weight is involved, let's just say a size 16 beadhead, it'll settle a little bit more. We like to think that it would track eventually. Like, if the drift is long enough, I like to think that it's going to track upstream of the dry a bit as the dry comes downstream in hopefully the same lane.
That's where Matt has an advantage of, he has bigger flies on both end of it. And so that tension is going to come taut quicker than it would if you put like a size 16 unweighted fly. It may take it, whatever, 100 yards of stream to catch up. But then the two, if you've got a heavy fly on top and a heavy fly on bottom, it's going to, straighten out sooner.
It'll straighten out sooner. I do definitely see, like, if you fish dry dropper long enough, you'll see plenty of times where you set the hook and you'll see that fish flash downstream of the dry fly.
I know.
Just right. And you miss them.
That's a good point.
Right. I see it all the time.
Bad strike detection.
You don't see it all the time when you're indicator fishing, because usually those nymphs are lower and you don't necessarily see the fish flash. I'm not saying all the time, but like you're deeper. But when you're dry dropper, you're usually mid column. So you can, I always see a lot more fish turn in weird spots to justify everything you guys are saying.
It is.
That it's like, oh wow, I landed that nymph upstream of the dry fly, but by the time I set the hook, somehow that current that nymph got in was all wonky and it got downstream on my dry fly. Like, it happens quite a bit. It's definitely a detriment of that tactic.
How do you guys change, like, your decision on whether or not you're gonna switch over to a dry dropper if you're relatively committed to staying on a mono rig? If you're fishing a mono rig and you're like, this is a good opportunity to fish some dries, but maybe it's not a good opportunity to completely change out your sighter. In a situation like that, I think usually I would prefer to have a dropper on, because the casting and the drift length is all significantly better if there's a dropper, if you're fishing with a mono rig.
So you're talking tight line dry dropper style. Just to clarify.
If I'm fishing nymphs and I'm thinking now would be a good time to have a dry on as well. But maybe I'm not going to switch over to a Harvey or something like that. I would obviously much prefer to have a dropper on there, and even a heavier dropper. I'd be curious to know if you guys have noticed this, but one of the things that happens if you, with like a light dry dropper system, is that dry on a mono rig tends to skate earlier, like skate and drag earlier in the drift, and the heavier nymph you can...
Yeah, it'll balance you out.
Yeah, it gives you a longer drift by a few feet.
When Austin and I talked about the differences in that skill series, Austin, you remember, we talked a lot about how you needed to balance it's the air resistance really of the dry fly with the weight the weight of the nymph that can overcome then that air resistance of the dry. It's not even the size as much as the air resistance. That's a limitation then, a downside of the tight line dry dropper style.
Yeah, and I think
for sure.
just light dry dropper on a tight line.
Well, just I don't want to get things confused. What we call light dry dropper, right?
Yeah.
Is
But if you're going to fish a really light dropper
There you go.
on a tight line,
yeah.
what Josh is saying there is yes, wind resistance, of course, but just the general cast becomes very difficult to achieve distance with versus a heavier weight on the dropper. But again, I come back to like I don't know, some like the best tool for the job, and that is a good system to me to go to when I see an occasional rise or there's like one fish rising and I'm going to try to pick it off, but there's nothing else going on. If I'm going to commit to fishing dry dropper, personally, I like to be able to switch over to a regular dry fly leader and fish that way throughout the day. But being able to do it on a mono rig or tight line system is super fun and super versatile and can save you a lot of time in your day of changing over and tying knots.
Austin, does the stream size impact that for you?
Great question. So I fish regular dry dropper on brook trout streams a lot, but I think I could do it just as well, or maybe sometimes better with the mono rig. But I really enjoy casting up into those tunnels with fly line and getting some distance that I wouldn't be able to get on a regular tight line rig. Also, the thing that limits me in some small streams is the weight of that dropper. Where if I'm fishing a brook trout stream that doesn't necessarily have much depth, but I need distance, I'm going to handicap myself through that mono rig.
Good answer. I hear that.
Sometimes I feel like I'm the opposite in small streams out here when they're like big water, boulders, tumbly, and you can get really close to the fish.
Right.
You know?
That makes a difference.
And that makes a difference when the water conditions are appropriate. It's funny because we could have the same two stream sizes, but your CFS flow is 8 times less than what my
true.
CFS flow is.
That's a
So
good
I can
point.
get in there and like pick these little boulder strewn streams apart with a simple Royal Wolf on the standard mono rig and tight line to it, right? And I can cast it plenty fine, right? But I can get close.
That's cool.
You know, just another different, situation.
So you know what I've been doing a lot? The bugs are out, right? They have been for a month and a half or something, different hatches. I've been kind of going back and, again, playing with the leader design, like I said earlier. That's why I want all those spools of Tippet in my vest. I've been really working on my mending. I think I'm pretty good at mending. But I find it extremely challenging to put it in, like I'm going to say, like any kind of moving water. I'm just talking standard dry dropper. Standard dry dropper, maybe I am going to have a size 14 parachute Adams on because I'm here, Matt. And I'll have a size 14 beadhead pheasant tail underneath. To get the men's, well, all right, the real problem is, I think we've already acknowledged this, but the weight takes your slack with you. And I, again, am very obsessive about trying to get super clean dead drifts on my dry fly. That's what I usually want. When I'm fishing a dry, that's the look that I want. So it's hard for me to accept that now that pheasant tail, that beadhead, has taken my slack that I was building in with S-curves and that Harvey leader. It's taken it out. That's the fundamental problem for me. And then I've seen people, they're really good at mending and introducing enough slack to make it pretty good. And I keep thinking like I can get better and better or do a different leader design to kind of, once it's on the water, I know that it doesn't have all those S-curves, but now let me introduce it with like excellent mending. Yeah. Thoughts?
I guess what I've noticed over, let's say, the last 5 years, I feel like the ability to catch fish on a dry dropper system with fly line on a consistent basis with the added pressure has been greatly impacted. Like I remember fishing dry dropper 10 years ago when fish weren't as educated and you could catch a lot more fish because, you get half a decent drift and you would catch fish. Where now I feel like that system is suffering a little bit because of pressure. Like on highly pressured systems, I see it because you're not getting the best of both worlds. And so you're kind of, again, half-assing nymph fishing and half-assing dry fly fishing. I feel like you're not presenting the fish the best presentation, and so you're not going to catch as many fish. So like if I go to fly line, it's pretty much to throw dries.
Anybody else? Can anybody give me some expert mending tips? I don't know that it's possible. I'm talking about some average flow, you know.
You must mend it.
Yeah, mend it. You got to keep mending. And I'm talking about clean dead drifts, not just like, well, it's not dragging much.
What type of water are you fishing it in?
That's what I mean. Like if it's the flattest water and slow, I can introduce enough slack to get myself, I don't know, 10, 15, even 20 feet of a drift. You got to be careful in mending and that kind of stuff because you could spook fish with like aggressive mends too.
Yeah, and then how much slack do you want to build before it compromises your hook set?
Sure, but I deal with that when I introduce like my lagging curve on a Harvey leader. I got a lot of slack to the dry, but I'm ready to hook set. I don't miss any fish, Matt.
but if I guess if I'm fishing flatter
old
water,
Mendy over there,
old Mendy.
Nice.
I got
but
it.
if I fish flat water, I'm fishing down at a 45 for that stuff.
Oh man, downstream guy, get off the podcast.
Oh, hey now.
You got to fish for some real fish that are tough.
Let's talk about that. No. The toughest fish I'm fishing upstream. There's Disagreeable Deli. There he is.
Yeah. All right. We'll take you. We'll take you up to the Catskills, and you can throw upstream on a fish.
I'll do
and
it.
See how many.
I'll bring John Shaner with me. He'll show you how to do it. Right? He's an upstream guy. He confirmed. Anyway, situational. Let's dedicate a whole podcast to that. I have that on the list actually. Angles, not just dry fly, but like fishing angles, just general.
Yeah,
we kind of cover it all.
That's a good one.
And then Deli and I will have good team trout pitting competition, and not just get the best dead drifts, but look the best doing it with Deli's hat. It's the Grayskull hat.
Take it out on the water, fish for fish competition.
See his hat? That's
quicker.
Is that the Grayskull?
Skeletor.
Oh, Skeletor.
Skeletor.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
That's fantastic.
So I did mention earlier, and we have talked about it, light dry dropper with a dry fly leader, and you're trying to, well, like Austin has said well, that you're trying to prioritize the dry fly. And the dead drift on that dry fly is the most important thing. And then a very light, unweighted, usually, nymph is along for the ride. Still an imperfect system, but I think you can get really close to getting great drifts, almost the same as you could on that dry fly without the nymph attached. That's light dry dropper. What we call standard dry dropper or bobber dry dropper is what I guess we were talking about earlier. Put that chubby on, put something, doesn't have to be heavy, but something that has some weight underneath. I guess that's the one where you're kind of trying to have the best of both worlds the most. And then the tight line dry dropper we've talked about a little bit here is on a mono rig on a tight line system, and beyond the dry fly, you have your nymph. And then we're keeping everything, well, when the situation allows, you're keeping everything up off the water. You're basically taking the tight line advantage to that dry fly. So without any line on the water, it's not going to drag. Assuming it's not windy, assuming you're close enough. I just want to encourage you, whatever, if you're interested in that, those are well broken down in the article series, in the podcast series. I don't want to kind of leave everybody hanging here. It's there for you, right? Go check it out. Hey, Austin, will you read us out? We're going to make fun of you.
I'd love to.
You ready?
All right. I'm ready. Are you ready?
Don't make any mistakes.
So remember, the Trout Bitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Trout Bitten website hosts over 1,500 articles, videos, and podcasts with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags too. Be sure to find the Trout Bitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Trout Bitten Tips series, fly fishing the mono rig, and the Trout Bitten fly box, all in collaboration with Wilds Media. You also find the fish and film videos in the Riverside series and the new In Deep series, all in their own playlists on Trout Bitten YouTube.
It's incredible.
Thank you for listening to the Trout Bitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment, because that really helps. Till next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the Dry Dropper.
Awesome. That was so impressive.
I'm used to ignoring you guys.
I'm used to ignoring.
ephemerella rotunda.
Used in Latin. All right. You get out of here.
You get out of here.
That's right.